discovered the shocking secret for you to become a better leader in 90 seconds in today's episode with Daniel Tolson. Over the past 28 years, Daniel has launched, led, and built million-dollar businesses, and he has delivered more than 10,000 scientific case studies on business leaders, co-led a team of 17,500 cabin crew at Emirates Airlines, and has had more than 25,000 leaders apply his ideas to make an impact. And within 90 seconds, he can help you become a better leader. So Daniel, tell us, how can entrepreneurs become a better leader in 90 seconds? Heal Podcast with Lily Patrascu shares longevity and anti-aging techniques to stay young forever, increase energy, overcome addiction, and live your longest, best life ever. Shared by world's most innovative, alternative, and traditional health thought leaders, healers, and doctors. Discover quantum healing strategies to heal your mind, body, and soul.
Well, the first thing we've got to be able to do is we've got to be able to trust in science. And in the last couple of years, we've had huge breakthroughs in a technology called vocal biomarker technology. And whenever we're speaking, our brainwave frequencies are coming out of our voice. And today, with big data technology and AI, we can connect those brainwave frequencies to emotions and personality types. So with a 90-second voice analysis, we can look at things like your stress type, your personality. We can have a look at all the energy centers in the body. So if you're familiar with the chakra, we can look at the energy centers in all the chakras. We can have a look at people's core emotions, their frequent emotions, and even those subconscious emotions that are trapped inside the amygdala. So with a little bit of science and a 90-second voice analysis, we can teach people more about themselves in 20 minutes than they could possibly discover in 20 years of self-discovery. And it's that self-discovery component that leads to more confidence and becoming a better leader.
Thank you. How does knowing your personality report help you become a better leader?
There's an old quote that says, awareness before change. And there's a lot of things that leaders want to change about themselves. They want to have a bigger impact. But to have a bigger impact, you have to learn more about your strengths. Leaders also want to have influence. But if they want to have influence over others, they've first of all got to have influence over themselves. So with AI technology and the integration of emotional intelligence, leaders can quickly learn about their strengths and limitations. Now, we're not saying that you've got to spend a lot of time working on your limitations. I think a lot of limitations should be just left to the side. And what we should do is focus on our strengths. And I like to call those our God-given talents. And if we just play to those God-given talents, we're playing to our strengths. And that's what gives leaders confidence. And if they know themselves, if they have empathy for themselves, then they can start to understand other people better. You know, we say that you can't give what you don't have. And all of the top leaders need to be empathetic. And the best leaders know themselves. And I think we've all had a leader in the past where we look at them and we think, did you get there by chance? Did you get to that position by luck? Because you don't really know who you are. And you're trying to tell me who I am, but you haven't even figured it out for yourself first. And that's where we say awareness precedes change. So if they first of all want to become better, they've got to understand what's their starting point, what's their baseline. And from there, you can teach any leader any skill to achieve any goal.
Thank you. Tell us how knowing the 8 personality traits that you've classified entrepreneurs with, how does knowing that has led to massive breakthroughs for leaders you've worked with?
The big breakthrough for me came during the pandemic. And I think all of us in business, we realized that what got us here wouldn't get us any further. And so as the world changed, I started to see some interesting changes in my personality. I started to have a lot more stress. I started to push myself beyond my limits, and I lost a bit of self-control. And what I started to realize was I started to have self-harming behaviors that definitely weren't helping me. They were hurting me. And during the pandemic, I met a a team of doctors and scientists, and we got talking about this particular technology. And they said to me, Daniel, are you familiar with the 9 different personality types? And I said, well, at the moment, I feel like I got 2. I feel like I'm Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And they said, well, there's 9 different types of personality traits. And they started to describe them. And I honestly couldn't figure out which one I was. So they let me use this technology. It revealed to me my personality type. And my personality type was revealed as the perfectionist. And I thought to myself, perfectionist? I couldn't be any further away from a perfectionist. And the reason why I say that is that I'd been in business for years. I'd had my own businesses. I worked for family businesses. I had already done thousands of scientific reports, and none of them showed that I was a perfectionist. And so I said to them, that doesn't really connect with me. They said, well, what you're trying to do is you're trying to look at this technology through the lens of a different technology. And I think a lot of leaders have heard about the science of DISC. And DISC reveals to you your behaviors. Now, a high C style in the DISC model would represent somebody who was a perfectionist. Well, my C style, there's almost nothing in there. I find it hard to get into the details. So I felt disconnected. And then they started to show me these personality traits. And it started to make sense. And how we develop that personality trait of the perfectionist is often developing a fear of making mistakes in childhood. And when children make mistakes, as at school or at home, often the parents are there to reprimand them. And I started to think about it. I said, I don't think I've got a fear of making a mistake. But then my past started to come back to me. So when I was 11, I was diagnosed with a linear sequential learning disability. And I remember the teachers always saying to me, Daniel, you don't try hard enough. Daniel, you're not focused enough. Daniel, you're not present. If you just put some more attention to your work, you'd be a top student. Now, I started to get it because when I made a mistake in class, they would embarrass me. They would single me out. And that happened for 5 straight years at school. So because they couldn't fix me, they sent me to remedial therapy. They said, therapy will fix him. Well, I came back from the therapy and they said, now we think you should drop out of school. Now, once I dropped out of school, I started to have a pattern of self-harm. But I never realized this pattern. It was outside of my awareness. And in the report, it said the perfectionist will reprimand themselves. They'll harm themselves if somebody's not there to punish them. And I finally realized where the root cause of that personality problem came from. And in terms of mentioning awareness precedes change, as soon as that came back into my conscious awareness, that this was part of my personality trait, immediately I got control over those behaviors. So what it enabled me to do was to stop limiting behaviors. I had a new level of self-appreciation and I could get focused in business again. Now, for me, once that happened during the pandemic, I had a lot more confidence, I had a lot more energy, and I put another 10,000 people through my programs. I started to give my clients this technology, and they started to have breakthroughs they hadn't had before. One gentleman in the past 12 months has increased his income, sales income, by more than $500,000. He didn't learn any new marketing, didn't learn any new sales techniques. He just started to learn how to get the most out of his personality. And so for leaders, once you know your strengths, you can use them. And that's what happened to me, and that's what people use the technology for.
Thank you. Now that you have my vocal biomarker report, what can I do to become a better leader in 90 seconds?
Okay. Well, there's 3 things we looked at in your vocal biomarker technology. And we're going to cover 3 things today. We're going to have a look at stress. We're going to have a look at personality type. And we're going to have a look at the energy in all 7 of your chakras. So the first thing that we have a look at here is stress type. There's 3 types of stress. There's logical stress, emotional stress, and sentimental stress. The type of stress that impacts your personality is what we call high logical stress. Now, people who are high in logical stress are excellent with people. They're excellent with people. People with high logical stress get stressed about things without a heartbeat. So when it comes to losing sleep, you'll lose sleep over your job. You'll lose sleep over business. You'll lose sleep over your task list. People who are also experiencing logical stress are often having health challenges in the present moment. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Do you lose sleep at night thinking about the jobs to be done?
Yes.
But you're very good with people at the same time. Does that sound like you?
Yes.
Wonderful. So your stress type is logical stress. The second thing we look at in Mind Report is your personality type. And your personality type is what we call type 2, the giver. Now, the type 2 style is very warm-hearted. They're very kind and also very generous. And what they want to do is they want to help other people, even sometimes at the expense or a cost to themselves. Would you see yourself as a people helper? Somebody who likes to give?
Yes, I would say that I extend myself a little bit too much, and to the point of being almost a people pleaser. And I know I have to work on that.
So what we say here is sometimes we sacrifice our own needs for others because as a giver, we get so much joy in giving. One of the things that I've noticed is with people who are givers, sometimes they're very focused on helping others. I'm going to help you build your business. I'm going to help you build your brand. I'm going to help you get on stage. I'm going to put you in front of thousands of people. And they're very good at giving. And one of the things that the giver has to learn is to become a good receiver. Is learning to ask for help. And a lot of givers say, I'm excellent at giving advice. I'm excellent at giving help. But sometimes I struggle to ask for help for myself. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
So that's the giver personality. We also look at your energy centers, and there's 7 energy centers. And what I can see here is your root energy center is balanced, which is what we want. We can see that the sacral chakra is overactive at the moment, and the solar plexus is underactive. So when these are overactive and underactive, what happens here is we tend to feel some very strong and intense emotions. Do you feel that your emotions can come on really strong at times?
Yes, always.
Well, with these two here, whenever they're out of balance, the emotions can go from 0 to 100 almost immediately. But for you, it's not the emotion of anger. For the emotion of anger for you, you can balance out the emotion of anger and frustration. You can manage that really, really well. Now, with your heart chakra is also balanced. One of the beautiful parts about having a balanced heart chakra, we tend to have a very healthy immune system as well. So you've got a balanced heart chakra. Your throat chakra is just a little bit active. What we find is with people who have an active throat chakra, they often spend a lot of time talking. They're talking to people, they're doing podcasts as a host, they're being a guest. And oftentimes, although it's overactive, it's not a bad thing. It's oftentimes their strength. And I'm sure you've had a lot of compliments over the years. People say, well, Lily, how can you just get up on stage and talk? Like, I would have to spend hours and weeks trying to prepare, but you just seem to get up there and you talk. But it's not just when you talk. People actually lean in and they listen to you. Do you find it easy to get up on stage and talk? To deliver a message?
I do now, but it has been a long journey to get here.
Yes. I can also see here that the third eye energy center is slightly overactive, and also the crown chakra is also overactive. At the time that you took your mind report, had you had a couple of nights of interrupted sleep, finding a little bit hard to get to sleep?
Yes, and actually, I go to bed at 4 a.m. most nights, and I'm trying to get back into a routine of getting to bed at 12 or 11, which sounds almost unreal.
Well, when the crown chakra is overactive, and yours is too high at the moment, and so is the third eye chakra. If we're staying up till 4 a.m. in the morning, your lungs won't be able to work at their peak. In Chinese medicine, the optimal time for lung health and the time that lungs function at their peak is between 3 and 5 a.m. in the morning. If we're awake between the hours of 1 and 3 a.m. in the morning, our liver's not working. Now, if you're staying up to 4 a.m., what's happening is that the brain and the light surrounding you is getting a signal that it's still daytime outside, and it won't be able to produce enough melatonin. because once the melatonin's released, it also gets turned into serotonin. But you need the melatonin to help you go to sleep. And so the circadian rhythms for you will be out of balance. So for excellent health, got to get to bed earlier than 12. You got to get to bed at 10, unless you're working across time zones.
No, it's very possible for me to do that. It just like today, for example, I managed to go to bed at 10:30. And I woke up at 2:30 and stayed up until 5:30 and slept again until 10. So I do think that I will be able to tame my routine, my circadian routine this week. Yeah.
Yes. What you'll also find is that when the solar plexus energy center is also underactive, we can often feel that we lack some confidence. But what happens is we have a hormonal imbalance. We don't have enough serotonin in the body. So it can feel like, hey, maybe I don't have enough confidence, but it's actually because of the sleep deprivation, we end up with a form of chronic fatigue. And so we battle with the sleep patterns and we don't have the amount of serotonin in the body, so we feel bright and bubbly all the time.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that's what I can detect in 90 seconds. I have never met you before. It's the first time we've talked. And this technology here, in 90 seconds, we analyze 1,440 emotional triggers. And we can also see up to 14,000 health and genetic disorders. So in 90 seconds, we can see so much. This is just kind of the surface, but there's so much more to see.
Thank you. Tell us about the genetic disorders. Do you mean that, do you see with this technology, do you see the predisposition for certain illnesses that may come in the future or are really highly likely to come in the future? Is that what you mean?
Absolutely. There was more than 1,000 case studies performed in Brazil, and they were looking at people who had strokes. Now, specifically in stroke victims, there was always an imbalance in the first 6 chakras. So meaning the root, the sacral, the solar plexus, the heart, the throat, and the third eye were all out of balance. And the crown was the only energy center that was balanced. And across 1,000 people who had a stroke, those energy centers were the same. I was performing a case study on a business person recently, and they had just had a stroke 2 years prior. The energy balance was still in the body, and when we used the technology, we could see that they'd already had a stroke. We can also see people who are predisposed to cancer. One of my clients recently, he had some unusual growths on his neck, and we were able to detect the genetic issues there. And within days, he went to the hospital and had an operation, but the doctors had never taken it serious. We can see learning disabilities. We can see the biomarkers of cancer, many, many things. So our technology, albeit I use it for personal development, we also have partnerships with local hospitals who use it for a detection method. There's hospitals in India who are using this technology. And in some of these populations in India, it's hard to imagine in the UK and Australia that some of their cities have 6 million people in there, but they might only have a handful of psychologists. So within a 90-second voice analysis, we can detect people who are at high risk for mental health disorders like suicide. And doing that, we can get them priority mental health care, that we can get them to jump the queue and get help immediately. But if they don't have those biomarkers, we don't have to bring them in and treat them immediately. We can triage the right people. So many people use it for many different ways, and that's just kind of scratching the surface of what we're doing at the moment.
Thank you. How accurate is this technology in terms of predicting possible diseases?
Based on the recent data and tens of millions of case studies, we're at 99.99%. So just like an X-ray or a blood test, it has the same efficiency rates and the same predictability as that technology.
Thank you. Tell us how the use of this technology has led to breakthroughs that your clients have had.
One of the biggest breakthroughs was one of our clients, which is the Malaysian government. And in COVID, they used the technology to do a non-invasive test for people with COVID. Now, they were able to detect people with or without COVID with a non-invasive test. That was a big breakthrough for them. The Malaysian government also used the technology to detect mental health issues in the youth. And over a 30-day period, they performed 17,500 voice analyses. And through that, they were able to get priority care for more than 2,500 young people with mental health disorders. So a huge breakthrough for the Malaysian government. For my clients, I have a client who's in Ireland and he has sleep apnea. And being able to detect his inner health problems, we were able to take him from having 68 sleep disturbances per hour. 68. Imagine that. There's only 60 minutes in the hour. He would have 68 sleep disturbances. He would also have his CPAP machine on when he sleeps. Using our technology and our vocal health and our vibrational technology, which is called sound frequency therapy, we've been able to get him consistently into deep sleep for 90 minutes. And that's happened within 90 days. So we have our vocal biomarker technology, then we have our sound frequency immunotherapy technology to make the changes in people's health and fitness.
Thank you. Is that bioresonance?
Bioresonance, but different because we do it through auditory delivery. So you've got things like Rife machines, which are more of a physical approach. Ours is sound frequency.
Thank you. Tell us more about other case studies of leaders that have implemented your technology and how that has led to making more money. Like which aspect of knowing their personality or their chakras or some other aspect, and how did that lead onto making more money and becoming a better leader?
One of my clients is a lawyer. And as her job as a company secretary, she has to overlook and make sure that more than 800 people are compliant across a privately owned business that has billions in revenues. Now, when she was in her career as a lawyer, her career path had become stagnated for many, many years. And so when she started to use this technology in 2000, she started to have some breakthroughs. And the breakthroughs came by understanding how she expressed emotions. Because with this technology, we can also have a look at people's level of emotional expression and disclosure. Now, people are 100% emotional. Everybody's 100% emotional, but it's how they express the emotion. So for many years, she couldn't express how she felt. Didn't mean that she wasn't phenomenal at her job. People just didn't understand the emotional component. It's like public speaking. We've got to have logic, we've got to have emotion, and we've got to have character. She had the logic, she had the character, she was just missing the emotional component. So we gave her access to our sound frequency immunotherapy. She started to have improvements in her level of awareness. Her level of emotional and disclosure went from being level 4 inward up to balanced. Once her emotional expression was balanced, she started to have better connections within the business. Those better connections led to 3 promotions. She had 5 pay rises in the past 3 years, and then was promoted all the way up to company secretary. And what we find is that once people make improvements in just emotional expression and disclosure alone, their confidence increases. Once their confidence increases, they start to enforce their boundaries. Once they start to enforce their boundaries, they actually start to ask for what they want. And so that's a lawyer in Malaysia called Rosita Otham, and she's become very successful using the technology.
Thank you. In terms of the chakras, what is the normal level that they should be at? And how does knowing, let's say, that you have an imbalance there, how does your process help them heal that? Is it that you just kind of give them the diagnosis and then you send them out to some therapists to kind of deal with? Or what is it that you do that enables them to improve that imbalance?
Well, I think for a lot of people, they never get to the root cause. A lot of people throughout their life, and like the Western medical system, it focuses on the symptomology, not the deeper issues. So a psychologist will tell you that it takes 50 years to get over the first 5 years of your life. And when we're carrying trauma, it gets trapped in the chakras. So once we understand where the past traumas are with the individual, and to give you an insight of that, is our technology measures not just what's happening today, it's also measuring what's happened in the past. So to understand human development, when the baby is in the mother's womb, it starts to emit its own brainwave frequencies at the 7th month. So our technology has the ability to detect brainwave activity all the way back to the final trimester in the mother's womb. And if there was disturbances in the mother's womb in the final trimester, or if there was challenges and disruptions in the early childhood, that's going to show up as imbalances in the chakra. And once we get to the root cause of that, then we can give them the right advice. It could be personal coaching, it could be work with a psychologist, it could be sound frequency immunotherapy. Or in some cases, what happens is these emotional traumas become physical. And for some people, it'll develop into psychosomatic illnesses where the mind makes the body sick. So we do three things. We do an examination, we do a detection, and then we provide a prescription. Now, if it's coaching, we might prescribe a coaching program. If it's for medical use, the doctors might prescribe medication. So it's a very holistic approach to better health. Once the client sorts out that area, then they're free to go on and do whatever they please, which for a lot of business owners is time to get down and make some money.
Thank you. Tell us about other aspects that leaders have managed to heal by discovering their health profile, their biomarker profile, vocal biomarker profile, and how that has led to them becoming better leaders. Give us another case study of that.
Well, in the world today, there's a lot of addiction. People are addicted to social media. Leaders are addicted to alcohol, tobacco, and substance. People are addicted to pornography. And if we're looking at the root chakra, if we're looking at the energy centers in the body, if there's an imbalance in the throat chakra, we'll often identify the root cause of different forms of addictions. So in a case study that I was working with recently, when we were looking at the imbalances in the chakra, the client revealed that there was a history of physical and emotional abuse. And because of that history of physical and emotional abuse, the individual felt like an imposter. And so as a leader, they never really felt authentic around their team. They never really felt that they could be their true self. So once that situation was sorted out and the imposter syndrome disappeared, they had the confidence to lead. They had the confidence to hold people accountable for their KPIs and their KRAs. And once that took place, the business automatically grew. And I think if we have a look at the theory of constraints, is anytime we set a goal, there's also a series of constraints between us and the goal. And 80% of the things that hold us back in life are within ourselves. And 20% of the things are external. And so once they overcome those inner obstacles, then they change and they grow really fast. And so we see that a lot, dealing with addiction of many forms. And when we have an addiction, we're just trying to silence that inner voice. And if anybody has had an addiction, they know it can be really loud here inside the head. What's the old analogy about the two wolves? There's one wolf on this shoulder and one wolf on that one. One's telling you the right things to do and the other one's telling you all the things that are impossible. And if we start to silence that inner voice, or we can start to learn how to substitute that inner dialogue for a healthier dialogue, the leaders start to perform a lot better, especially with leading their team.
Thank you. For leaders that have experienced trauma, how do they get rid of the need to be reprimanded? Because what I mean is like they are used to getting that, right? So they are seeking it out because that's the thing that's familiar in their environment. That's the thing that has been familiar for them since they are young, and then they continuously seek this out. So they start to attract clients that reprimand them, or situations where they get punished. And like you said, if not, they get into this. If there's nobody to reprimand them, they will reprimand themselves. They will self-judge. So how does the dynamic shift from this cycle of abuse, of being abused, or even self-abuse?
Well, if we put it into the context of emotional intelligence, there's 5 pillars of emotional intelligence. The first pillar of emotional intelligence is self-awareness, and that's understanding why we think and feel the way that we do. So first of all, the leaders have to understand why they think, feel, and act the way that they do. So we've got to understand our personality. That's the first thing. Once we understand where the limitation is, then we've got to acquire new self-regulation patterns. Because if we can't name it, we can't tame it. And a lot of things we can talk, people like Brian Tracy, he said, with some healthy dialogue, 99% of the population can cure most of their internal obstacles. So we've got to learn some regulation strategies. In terms of regulation strategies, there's so many different things that you can do. Some people would lean towards doing NLP processes. Some people would lean towards doing hypnotherapy. Some people might even seek out regression type therapy. Others sound frequency healing or Reiki. So that's the second thing. You've got to be able to learn to regulate that. And there's really no one size fits all thing to do. The third thing is also, the third pillar of emotional intelligence is motivation. And what we have to do is we have to start to have an intrinsic motivation. A lot of people who enjoy being reprimanded by others have a strong external frame of reference. And what a strong external frame of reference means is that they never know internally when they're doing a good job. And they also rely on somebody else to tell them when they're on track or off track. So when it comes to emotional intelligence, we've got to make sure that we've got both intrinsic drivers and extrinsic. People also need to focus on what makes them tick. And if you're doing something that doesn't excite you, then you might find a need for self-punishment. That could be one possibility. Another possibility is that some people are rewarded by the carrot and some people are rewarded by the stick. And if people are rewarded by the stick, they'll be a sucker for punishment. And I've had business people say to me, Daniel, if somebody just told me I couldn't achieve this, Daniel, if somebody told me it's not possible, I'd say, well, screw you, I'm going to prove to you that I can do it. But what happens with that, it's an external form of motivation. Somebody's got to put you down. Somebody's got to be a bully, which means you have to be a victim. There's got to be a perpetrator and then the person who's perpetrated in that game. So motivation, in this case, relies on somebody else to hit you with a big stick. Now, that might work to start with, but it's very short term and it's inconsistent because it always relies on somebody else. Other people call it a 6-3 relationship. It's the basis of an abuse cycle. So the best way to cure that is to have intrinsic motivation, is to have an internal frame of reference. And it's to move your motivation towards what you want and away from what you don't want. So if you wrap all that up into emotional intelligence, one, you've got to understand why you think and feel the way that you do, self-awareness. Secondly, you've got to be able to regulate it. Thirdly, you've got to have the motivation to change.
Thank you. Tell us, how can leaders heal the potential predicted diseases that they are likely to get? So let's say someone who is relatively healthy now, but let's say with your vocal biomarker tool, you discover that they are likely to get, I don't know, MS or Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or something like that in, I don't know, 10 years, or I'm not sure how many years in advance you can predict that. What would someone do? Is it that you would guide them towards the doctors to kind of get some assistance, or is it something that you help them with as well with the frequency machine?
Well, things like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease can be detected in a 4-second voice analysis. 4 seconds. Sound frequency immunotherapy, based on the studies coming out of the Journal of American Medicine, show that sound frequency therapy can help reduce the signs and the symptoms of Parkinson's and Alzheimer's very quickly. Now, for me personally, that's outside of my scope. If somebody has a medical diagnosis, then we hand that over to the doctors and the specialists. And then what they do is they designed specialized medical frequencies for these individuals. So as an example, for myself, is I had a vaccine injury. And for a long time, I lost a lot of strength in my body. I'm a former athlete. I'm very fit and healthy until I got the vaccine. The day that I got that vaccine, I thought my heart was going to stop. It went and it almost paused. After having the third vaccine, I was lucky to do 1 push-up. So as part of my therapy and recovery, my team of doctors and scientists, they designed a medical version of the sound frequency immunotherapy. And it was designed to heal my body, specifically to reduce the level of stress and cortisol in the body. They also increased my levels of testosterone in my body. And that's a medical version. So if people are suffering mental or emotional issues, we have the right team to be able to help them manage that. If it's a physical issue and a diagnosed disease, then the team of doctors specialize in that.
Thank you. Tell us where entrepreneurs can go to become a better leader in 90 seconds.
Go to my website, danieltolson.com, and on the top right-hand side, there's a button and it says Better Leader. And there you can learn all about the Mind Report and also the sound frequency immunotherapy.
Thank you. Follow me for more interviews with world's most innovative health change makers to live your healthiest life ever.